Hey guys, this is Brian Hilliard here, and I am with Ben Stoffel-Rosales from Pantheon. And Ben, thanks so much for coming out. I'm really looking forward to this interview.
I am as well. Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian.
Awesome. So one of the things that we talked about, we actually met when we were doing some presentations. You speak at word camps and stuff all over the place. We met here in Atlanta. And one of the things that you talk a lot about is sales and pricing and marketing, specifically for kind of developers and freelancers and kind of people of that ilk. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe kind of how you work with some of those folks over at Pantheon, just so people maybe who haven't seen you, and I don't know who they could possibly be, right? But for some of the folks who haven't seen you, maybe they can get a little feel for who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, so I work at Pantheon as a partner manager. So Pantheon is a hosting platform, and we provide developer tools to folks who are building websites. And often it's smaller agencies and freelance business owners who are running digital agencies and looking for development tools to help solve some of their problems. So I specifically work on the channel team here and work with partners who use our technology to solve their problems. And I often, as I mentioned, I work with smaller shops and freelancers who are often under-resourced and doing a lot of the sales themselves. They're doing business development and technology and operations, and they're wearing a lot of hats across the organization. So they want to accomplish, from a sales perspective, they want to accomplish efficiencies at scale without having to rethink the sales process every time. And often they come from a technology or design background, and they're put in this role of having to then sell, and it's challenging to do both, a little bit of everything.
Well, and that's a great point, Ben, because one of the things, I'm a sales and marketing guy myself, and I think that's probably why we connected, which was the idea that, for developers and designers and just freelancers in general, that sales and marketing thing can be a tough deal. You know what I mean? Talk to us a little bit about maybe some challenges that you've seen people face either. I mean, obviously we're not naming names, but just, tell us a little bit about some challenges, maybe one or two that you've seen that these folks are facing.
Yeah, the nature of wearing so many hats is that the downside is a lot of people end up doing a lot of things half well instead of doing a few things really, really well. And so often I'm talking to people who genuinely are good salespeople and who are great at communicating, but they just don't have the time or energy to put into just focusing on sales 24/7. They have so many other aspects of the business to run that it's challenging to think about a sales process. And so, the challenges I see are just not having enough people or time or energy to be focusing on sales outreach all the time. And so I work with them to make these complex and seemingly impossible tasks of sales processes just bite-sized and really manageable on a day-to-day basis.
Let's talk about sales process. I love that term. Great term. Discovery. Pick one. Maybe walk us through it a little bit. I love that sales process because a lot of times I think people think of sales as just this thing that I have to do, don't really want to do it. And, when I heard you speak, you really broke it down. So give us a little snippet.
Sure. So Pantheon is a 100-person-ish company, and our sales process has, I think, 11 very specific steps, all the way from a lead who just found out about Pantheon to a closed deal. Typically with the startups I work with, the smaller agencies, I recommend just doing 3 to 5 really basic steps and making them comprehensible and quantifiable. The two that I highlight the most or strongly recommend to those smaller shops are discovery and qualification. And so qualification actually comes first. It's just a screening. As fast as possible, you're trying to understand, is this person qualified? Is this person worth more of my time? I think one challenge that we all have as salespeople is we want to chase every single opportunity. We want to talk to every person in the world, when in reality, we only win a certain percent of business. And so our job needs to be qualifying things as quickly as possible or disqualifying things as quickly as possible. Our time is money, and we have to make the most of it. And so qualification is just I tend to do like a 15 to 30 minute meeting just to figure out, is this worth more of my time? And I have, a simple mantra is BANT, budget, authority, need, and timeline. I see used very often. Sometimes I don't think it's enough. I think people tend to lie about budgets or lie about authority, like, oh yeah, someone else signs the papers, or like, oh, we don't really have budget. So it's kind of hard to work through that. But I think often if you use BANT as like a guiding principle, then also try to understand what their challenges are, what their timeline is, you'll be able to qualify or disqualify pretty quickly.
I love that qualification process, and you're absolutely right about that. I wrote down this term, is this worth more of my time? I think a lot of times freelancers, specifically agencies, freelancers, a developer, whatever the case may be, right? I think a lot of times what they do is they look at, one of the points I talk about is I think we would all be better off if we spent our time like we did our money.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I mean? Because if I gave you $20, right, and I told you, well, you're out in the coast, so I might have to give you 40. But if we were here on the East Coast, $20 might not get you to lunch. But if I gave you $20, right, you were here on the East Coast, and I said, all right, listen, Ben, this is your $20. It's 8 in the morning, right? And this is your $20, and this is going to cover whatever gas you want to put in your car. You got a couple meetings, by the way, but this is going to cover whatever gas you got in your car. It'll help you pick up your lunch if you want, and you need to be back home here by 8 o'clock, so 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
$20 would get you through, but let me tell you what, you would really be looking at that. You would really be focused on where that money's being spent. And I think a lot of salespeople, business owners, whatever, in general, look at their time as this never-ending resource, when actually, and I know you would agree with me on this, their time is actually more valuable than the money.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree. And often people, we have an hourly rate. We know what it costs to buy our time, but we don't often think about it when we're pursuing sales opportunities or potentially wasting time. It's not at the top of our mind. And I think you're right. We have to think about our time in terms of dollars and cents and what money we could be making if we were using that time in a more productive way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, one of the things that has come up to me is sometimes people come up to me and they say that they're concerned about making the client mad, or they feel like they need to kind of underprice their work, right? We're talking pricing, obviously. They feel like they need to underprice their work in order to get the deal. How would you advise someone who maybe is not the most outgoing? Because that's the other problem, right? You run into people who maybe aren't, and that's fine. The most outgoing people, that's fine. But how would you advise someone who maybe is, again, developer or whatever the case may be, kind of work us through that? Because they're coming, I know they have to come to you because they come to me about that, when I'm speaking as well. What's your deal with that? What's your take?
Yeah, a couple thoughts. I mean, first, I don't think sales is, to be good at sales, you don't have to be the most extroverted person in the world. You don't have to be, the sales aficionado, this archetypical sales guy that we have in our heads. I think you just have to be kind of honest with what you're trying to accomplish. The second thought is that we have this concern that we're going to offend people or that the customer is always right. And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. I think you don't have to be trying to please everyone. Your job isn't to go make every person in the world happy. You have your own goals, and I think you got to keep those in mind. If your goal is to make X amount of dollars or grow your business in this many clients, you got to focus on that. And it has to be, your everyday should be focused on trying to get towards that goal, not accomplishing everyone else's goal.
That's a great point. I was actually, one of a young lady brought this up to me yesterday. I was on the phone with her, and she said flat out, she says, I'm a pleaser. Yeah. She says, and I'm personally not, but I get that. I don't think I'm the opposite, but I'm definitely not a pleaser. And, people come up to me and they're like, well, I'm a pleaser. What is it that I can do? And I like that. That's an interesting thought. Our job is not to try. And I think, specifically when you get into maybe the creative types, and I'm not trying to paint this broad brush, but I'm talking, right brain, you get into that creative group, they love what they do so much. I'm talking about your typical designer, right? They love what they do so much that it's almost like they would do it for $200 or, as opposed to looking at it like a business.
Yep. Totally agree. And I think that's a great indication that you're doing the right thing. If you enjoy it that much, it should be your focus. And, to your point of offending people, I think people understand, if you're honest, that, this conversation or this engagement is not accomplishing my goals, then I think people are totally empathetic about that, and they understand that there's a push-pull dynamic that we both are trying to accomplish something, and if it's not a good fit, then I don't want to waste your time any more than I want to waste mine, right? So I think it's mutually beneficial to understand things out of the gate as good or bad.
Awesome. That's a good one. I got a couple more questions here, then we're going to wrap up. First one is, tell me a little bit, sometimes you get people who are new in business, okay? And maybe you don't deal with them as much, and a little bit, I get that. Not as much, but sometimes where people are still working in their regular job, but not working, they want to break out on their own. You might run into those too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk to us a little bit about how you would recommend they kind of attack this pricing conversation, because a lot of times they don't even know where to start, Ben. They don't know where to start.
Yeah, I would really suggest, again, like 3 simple stages in a sales process just to begin with, so that they understand. There's this concept of the sales funnel, which, seems cheesy and overused, but I think it is really helpful in terms of, working towards a goal and understanding conversion rates between how many people I need to talk to, like what are the bite-sized activities I need to do on a day-to-day basis to get to this more grandiose goal of revenue or business. And so for those people just starting out, I think it's helpful to understand, just to measure things, just to measure how many people are you talking to, at what stage are they in the buying decision, and how can I move them from one stage to the next. And once you start to formalize those processes and understand these dynamic conversations in the context of your own sales process, then you begin to make more sense of things, and ultimately you get better at using your time in ways that are really productive.
That's awesome. I don't know if you've heard of Brad Sugars. He's got a book out. It's called Instant Profits. He's with Action Coach, and it was a really good book, and I would recommend it for anyone listening or watching. If you're new, I totally agree with those bite-sized conversion matrices, because a lot of times people think about sales and they think of it as, I need to grow my business, I need to do all this stuff. But what they really need to be thinking about is, what can I do today? What can I do this week? How does that roll up to this month? And then ultimately, I'm looking at it up here. I actually am a quarterly man when it comes to revenue goals. I tried the monthly. It made me stressed. And it got me. And I know, I'm going to share a little secret with the users here. Ben is not a stressed guy. Okay, he's the only person who I've heard use the word groovy in a business environment, and that was awesome. So Ben is not stressed. Okay, and I consider myself a laid back guy as well. You know what I mean? And I think you made another great point, which is, I don't consider myself this architectural sales guy. You know what I mean? And I don't consider you that either, by the way. And I think you would agree with that. But I can tell you have game. You know what I mean? And I can tell you, I believe I have a little game too. And I think that when people are trying to think of sales and marketing their business, they think of the used car salesman, but they're not thinking of people like you and I.
Agreed. Yeah, we have this image of someone who's like aggressive and doesn't listen to what you're trying to accomplish. They just want to push some product on you. And sales isn't about that. I don't think sales is about rapport. And I don't think anyone's bought from me because they like me. Maybe they like me, but I don't think they like me tens of thousands of dollars or whatever the average contract size is. I think how we get to these good sales relationship is just mutually understanding each other's goals. And the role of the salesperson is not to convince anyone. It's not about persuasion and swindling people into a decision that they might regret. Sales is about, trying to understand someone's goals and whether or not your product or service can help this person, help them accomplish something.
I love that. Jeffrey Gitomer calls that creating a buying environment. And in my mind, that's what sales is, right? It's creating an environment that's facilitating and that they can see solving their problem. All right, last one for the wrap up. Okay, some of the ongoing discussions, I'm pretty sure you had it at the Atlanta deal, hourly rate versus project pricing. Okay, so I want to talk pricing again, which is like one of my favorite subjects. So hourly rate versus project pricing or packages. There's a conversation around hourly. What? You're going to pay me for free? I can't work for free? Give us your take on that, a minute or two on that or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I work with agencies all across the board, so I wouldn't say that there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think there's right or wrong times and businesses in which to leverage those tools. And ultimately, it comes down to your internal sales process. You have to understand that, if you're chasing smaller projects or doing an hourly rate thing, then you might have to get more projects, but the sales cycle is going to be shorter. And maybe that's great for you. Maybe your price point is a little lower and you want to be chasing deals a little more actively. But on the converse side, if your deal size is bigger and you need to get fewer deals, but your sales cycle is probably a little longer, then those are factors you have to consider. And ultimately, it just goes back to having a comprehensive sales process that takes into consideration basic things like average time to close a deal, average number of leads you're going to need to pursue to have a qualified opportunity. But yeah, these all come back to just basic measurements of deal capacity planning and working backwards from there.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Maybe give out, where can people contact you if they wanted to connect with you? I don't know, maybe you've got some social media, website, throw something out there.
Yeah, I do indeed. I'm active on Twitter at the Ben SR for Stoffel-Rosales. I have two last names. So the Ben SR is my Twitter handle. And then you can email me at ben.rosales@pantheon.io. Are two great ways to get in touch. Is my preferred is Twitter if it's just casual or conversational sort of stuff. And then if it's more business query related, then just email me at ben.rosales@pantheon.io.
Well, that is awesome. That is Ben Stoffel-Rosales. My name is Brian Hilliard saying so long, take care, and thank you for your time.